Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. I choose my stories always a little in advance. I like keeping some stories on here so my friends can see what's coming, see what stories I'm going to be reading. And I found it so interesting today because the story I had picked out weeks ago ties into a lot of what you might be seeing at home and around you today, and just with things going on. And we're going to talk a little about that after this story. But it is such a great story. And again, as with all my stories, I have a little lesson we can tie into it. Just a way to get our thinking wrapped around what goes on in this story. So we'll be having a little discussion about it at the end. But it is a great story, a very popular one, very well known. Most of you have probably heard it. And I hope the discussion at the end makes you think about it in a whole new way, and you can take this thinking, take the lessons you might get from this forward in your own lives and use it to change your own thinking and your own actions and behavior out in the world. I love stories that can help us become even better, and it's so great. So as with my story that I read last, I have this book is illustrated by Bernadette Watts, which I love, and the original was written by Hans Christian Andersen. This story was adapted, so it's not the original version, but it was adapted and illustrated by Bernadette Watts. So the illustrations are beautiful. She's one of my favorites. But we are going to be reading today The Ugly Duckling, and it's just such a great one. I think there's a lot we can take away from this. And it's just so crazy that it happened to come up in my roster for our stories when we can take this forward into the world today. So let's get started. Look at this great picture. She just does such a wonderful job of doing these illustrations. It was a beautiful summer day. The sun was shining down on an old house surrounded by a moat. So a moat is a little body of water. Bushes, reeds, and flowers grew by the water's edge. In the shade of some big leaves, a duck was sitting on her nest, waiting for her eggs to hatch. It was taking a very long time, but finally, one after another, the eggs cracked and out came the ducklings. Only the biggest egg still lay there. The mother duck settled down again and waited for it to hatch. So she can see the egg that hasn't hatched right down here. At last, the big egg cracked open. The mother duck looked at the new duckling and thought, how big and ugly he is. He doesn't look like any of the others. Perhaps he is a turkey chick and is afraid of water? I'll take him to the moat and see if he can swim. The mother duck and her ducklings jumped right into the water. One duckling after another followed her. Even the ugly duckling jumped in eagerly. So he isn't a turkey chick after all, said the mother duck, relieved. It is my own child. Actually, now that I look at him again, he isn't ugly at all. Feeling contented, she led her ducklings to a farm nearby. But when they reached the farmyard, the other birds began to ridicule the ugly duckling. They pushed him, pecked him, and chased him around the farmyard. Even the duckling's brothers and sisters were unkind to him. Finally, the mother duck cried, "Oh, if only you were far away from here." They're not being very nice, are they? So the ugly duckling ran away. He flapped over the fence, startling all the birds in the bushes who then flew off. That is because I'm so ugly, thought the duckling. He ran on until he reached the wide marsh where the wild ducks lived. There he lay, trembling, the whole night long. At sunrise, the wild ducks found him. How ugly you are, they quacked, but we don't care as long as you stay out of our way. My goodness. The duckling was lonely and frightened in the marsh. After a few days, a fearsome dog appeared and bounded up to the duckling. The duckling was terrified. I'd be terrified too. But the dog turned around and ran off without harming him. How lucky, thought the duckling. I look so ugly that even a dog doesn't want to eat me. The duckling rushed away across the marsh as fast as he could. At the edge of the marsh, he came to a tumbledown cottage. Hello. The duckling slipped through a crack in the door. There he saw an old woman sitting by the fire with her cat and her hen. They allowed the duckling to stay for a while, but only at the back of the room. Now I will get some duck eggs, said the old woman. But the duckling didn't lay any eggs. He sat sadly in the corner and dreamed of warm sunshine and swimming. Shunned by the cat and the hen, he went out into the world once more. Shunned, so they were ignoring him. They were not wanting to have anything to do with him. Eventually, he came to a lake where he could swim and dive. One autumn evening, just as the sun was setting, a beautiful group of birds flew by. They were dazzling white with long necks. They were swans. Although the duckling didn't know that, and they thrilled him. He had never seen such beautiful birds. So pretty, look at that sun. Winter came and it was bitterly cold. It would be very sad to describe all the misery the duckling suffered that long, harsh winter. Uh-oh. Does he look like a duckling anymore? What happened? Then one day the warm sun shone again. It was spring. The duckling spread his wings and flew away from the dikes and the marshes and came to a lake. There he saw 3 swans gliding majestically over the water. I will fly to those beautiful birds, he said. They may peck me to death because I am so ugly, but it doesn't matter. So the duckling glided down into the water and swam towards the swans. The duckling bowed his head over the water, expecting to be killed. But what did he see in the water? He saw his own reflection. No longer an ugly duckling, but a beautiful swan. The other swans swam round him and stroked him lovingly with their beaks. What does it matter where one is born if one has been hatched from a swan's egg? He remembered all the pain and misery he had suffered, but now everything had changed. He raised his long, slender neck and trumpeted. I never dreamed of so much happiness when I was a wretched, ugly duckling. looks like the most ideal kind of day. I love that story. So I am happy because this story ends very happy, doesn't it? The duckling finally finds where it belongs. It finds its family. It finds things that will accept it. So it ends very happy. But something happens in the story that is very sad. There's something in this story, and it's not so good. And so let's talk about it a little and see maybe how things could have been different had things worked out in a way. So this story shows something called discrimination. Discrimination means that sometimes if someone looks different, maybe if they act different, they're treated a little differently. And in this case, the discrimination showed to this duckling was very wrongful. It means that these critters, these animals, they were conscious, their actions were intentional. They were making this duckling feel bad about themselves. And why? Because it looked a little different from them. So I want to pose some questions about what do you think the story would have been like had some other little critter shown this duckling some kindness and acceptance? How would this story would have changed? Does looking different make someone ugly? I know I look a lot different than a lot of other people, and I love that. I think our differences are what make us beautiful from each other. And how would this story have looked if the duckling had been treated right by the mother duck at the very beginning, from the cat and the hen? How do you think it would have changed? And do you believe that if you don't look the same as those around you, then it doesn't make you fit in? No. If you look a little different, that's okay. And I'm glad the swan finally found his family and friends at the end. But how could the story have changed had someone shown him some kindness at the very beginning? I want us to take that out. If someone looks a little different, if they talk differently than us, if they think differently, take that as a beautiful thing. If everybody was the same, it would be a very boring world. So take that forward. If someone is different, show them kindness, because as we saw with this poor duckling, his life was so hard because people were just so mean, and it's so easy to just show somebody some kindness, and it would have changed this duckling's whole story. So but I love this story. It's such a good classic, and it has such a good lesson. Just take some kindness out into the world, and you might change somebody's whole story. So thank you for joining me today. I saw a lot of my friends. So I loved you being here with me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, friends.